The morning sun hung low over the shooting range, casting long shadows across the neatly lined targets 1,000 yards away. Bernard Hicks, 87, moved slowly but with deliberate purpose, setting down his worn canvas rifle case on the bench. His hands, gnarled with age but steady as ever, traced the contours of his rifle, a relic from another era. Blued steel faded to a soft gray, and its wooden stock marred with decades of use. Bright orange tape wound around the foregrip caught the sun, a vivid, almost jarring patch against the muted tones of his weapon. A group of young Marines, clad in sleek black scout sniper gear with massive scopes and carbon fiber bipods, approached noisily. Sergeant Evans, a man barely half Bernard's age, leaned in with a cocky smirk. "Is this some kind of joke? Seriously, what is that thing?" The voice carried over the range, sharp and laced with youthful arrogance. Bernard didn't flinch. His pale blue eyes remained fixed on the targets, his mind on the hundreds of rounds fired in similar situations decades ago. The laughter of the others swelled behind Evans. One Marine gestured at the orange tape. "Look at that, Sarge. Is that holding it together?" Bernard's hands moved mechanically, chambering a single round, each motion deliberate, economical, honed by a lifetime of experience. He did not reply. He could feel the scrutiny of the young men, hear their stifled snickers, yet his focus never wavered. Evans stepped closer, invading the old man's space, exuding the authority of youth untested by real war. "I'm going to need to see your range card and weapon certification. That rifle looks like it will fall apart if you sneeze too hard." Bernard reached into his flannel shirt pocket and slowly pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a laminated card, placing it gently on the bench. Evans glanced at it and scoffed. "Expired," he said. Bernard's voice, raspy but calm, corrected him. "It's permanent." Faded signatures from decades past confirmed it. Evans's frustration only grew. The tension mounted. Bernard's hand, surprisingly quick for a man of his age, covered the rifle's receiver. "Don't touch my rifle," he said softly, the words carrying a weight that briefly made Evans hesitate. Around them, onlookers watched, some lowering their rifles, feeling the injustice of the young sergeant bullying a veteran. The ridicule focused relentlessly on the tape, but for Bernard it was more than decoration. It was a symbol of survival, of resourcefulness in the frozen hills of Korea, where he had wrapped his own shattered rifle with that same orange tape, holding together a weapon under fire while saving the lives of his comrades. Memories flooded him. December 1950, Chaussin Reservoir. Frostbite and blood-stained snow, the shattering of his stock by a sniper's bullet, the survival kit with that roll of emergency tape, his fingers numb but determined. That makeshift repair had kept him alive, and now, decades later, the same tape bore witness to his history, each groove and layer a testament to endurance. Sergeant Evans' voice rose. "This is your last chance, old man. Hand over the rifle, or I'll have the MPs here in 5 minutes." The gravel crunched under tires, and 3 black SUVs screeched onto the range. The atmosphere shifted. Silence descended. From the first vehicle emerged a colonel, followed by Sergeant Major Reyes and other senior Marines. Evans froze, realizing he had provoked not just a veteran but a legend. The colonel's eyes fell on Bernard Hicks, and the universe seemed to realign around the old man. A crisp, flawless salute echoed across the firing line. "Gunnery Sergeant Hicks," the colonel intoned. "It is a profound honor to see you again, sir." Bernard's hands rested on the rifle, orange tape visible in the sunlight. His eyes, calm and patient, met the colonel's gaze. The mocking whispers of the young Marines evaporated, replaced by the humbling weight of history. They were children, Bernard mused quietly, lions in training. His focus remained on his rifle, the simple, battered instrument that had witnessed courage, survival, and the very essence of what it meant to be a Marine. Bernard Hicks adjusted his stance, the rifle resting lightly against his shoulder, and let his calm, measured breath set the rhythm. The range fell silent, the echo of the SUVs fading into a tense hush. Sergeant Evans, now pale and stiff, stepped back as the colonel's gaze bore down on him. Bernard's mind was a battlefield map in miniature, plotting angles, wind speeds, and the behavior of the rifle as if it were a living companion. "Show us." "Gunnery Sergeant," the colonel said, his voice steady but tinged with anticipation. Bernard nodded once, acknowledging the decades of experience condensed into this single demonstration. He lifted the rifle, orange tape gleaming in the early sun, and sighted the farthest target. The scope, though antiquated, was precise in his hands, the result of hundreds of thousands of rounds fired and countless hours spent studying wind and trajectory. The first shot cracked the air, splitting the silence. A metallic ping resonated as the bullet struck dead center. The second, third, fourth rounds followed, each hitting the designated targets with uncanny accuracy. Every Marine present felt the sting of inadequacy, young egos shrinking in the presence of mastery. Bernard's hands, though tremulous with age, moved with the grace of a conductor directing a symphony, orchestrating each shot with absolute control. Evans muttered under his breath, disbelief in his tone. Impossible. He's using that thing. The word thing could not mask the reverence creeping into his voice. Bernard ignored the murmurs, focusing on the next row of targets, adjusting for a crosswind he felt before it bent the grasses. Each round impacted as predicted, the rifle's worn wood and taped grip responding as if remembering every hand that had held it before. The colonel stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Bernard. "Remarkable," he said simply. "I've seen this weapon in the field, sir, but never handled with such control. Not in decades." Bernard's lips twitched in the faintest acknowledgement, a shadow of a smile beneath his grizzled mustache. He felt the ghosts of fallen comrades around him, the weight of history pressing gently on his shoulders. The Marines who had mocked him were now silent, their laughter replaced by awe. Even Sergeant Evans, struggling to maintain his posture, found his confidence eroding with each successive round. Bernard, sensing the shift in energy, allowed himself a brief glance at the young men, seeing potential instead of disrespect. A future where skill and patience could overcome arrogance. After 10 perfect shots, Bernard lowered the rifle, placing it gently on the bench. The orange tape glowed in the sunlight, a badge of survival and resilience. The colonel nodded approvingly. "Gunnery Sergeant, you honor every Marine who has come before and every young Marine who will follow. Let this lesson resonate beyond today." Bernard's heart, though slowed by age, carried a rhythm that matched the pulse of the range. He had proved once again that experience could not be bought, nor respect demanded. It was earned, shot by shot, with patience, skill, and integrity. The sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows across the range. Bernard Hicks stood silently, observing the young Marines as they lined up for their next drill. His eyes, pale blue and sharp despite age, scanned each face, noting tension, uncertainty, and raw eagerness. The rifle, now resting beside him, seemed almost like an extension of his own body. Worn wood, orange tape glinting, a testament to decades of service. Colonel Tyson cleared his throat. "Gunnery Sergeant Hicks, there's a new challenge for you. A timed obstacle course with marksmanship targets along the way. We've never seen anyone of your experience attempt it." Bernard's lips twitched, a hint of a smile playing at the corners. He had faced impossible odds before. This would be no different. The course was brutal. Wooden walls to scale, narrow beams to cross, sand pits to traverse, all while maintaining precision at multiple shooting stations. Young Marines rushed through, some stumbling, some panicking. Bernard watched, absorbing every detail, analyzing the wind's effect on dust and targets, memorizing distances and angles. His body ached slightly, but his mind was alert, calculating movements with methodical precision. The whistle blew. Bernard moved forward, calm and deliberate. Each step was measured, energy conserved, yet momentum maintained. At the first shooting station, he raised his rifle, orange tape glinting, and fired 3 shots. Each target hit squarely. The young Marines paused mid-action, astonished by his steadiness. One whispered, "He's unreal." Through the sand pit, Bernard's boots sank slightly, but he adapted, leaning his weight, maintaining balance. At the beam crossing, his arms flexed, gripping the aged wood with meticulous care. The rifle rested against his back, securely fastened as he advanced. Each movement was a testament to years of training, muscle memory, and unshakable focus. At the final shooting station, Bernard paused. The targets were distant, wind gusting unpredictably. He closed his eyes for a brief second, recalling countless drills, past battles, and lessons learned. Then slowly he aligned his scope, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. 1, 2, 3, every shot perfect. The targets were hit with surgical precision. The range echoed with muted astonishment, young Marines unable to comprehend the level of skill before them. Colonel Tyson's voice carried over the course, filled with both admiration and disbelief. "Remarkable, Hicks. Absolutely remarkable." Bernard allowed himself a small nod, acknowledging the praise without arrogance. He had never needed it. The course completed, he moved down the line, offering subtle guidance, correcting grips, and giving small tips that carried decades of wisdom in a few words. Even Sergeant Evans, who had previously doubted Bernard, found himself watching silently, respect replacing envy. Bernard's presence commanded it naturally, not through intimidation, but through mastery and quiet confidence. The young Marines had learned more in these few minutes than any standard training manual could teach. Bernard's actions were a lesson in patience, precision, and the quiet power of experience. As the sun climbed toward noon, Bernard finally lowered his rifle. Sweat dampened his uniform, hands slightly trembling from exertion, but his eyes remained focused, sharp as ever. The course had been a challenge, yes, but one he had approached with methodical calm. Each movement, each shot was a reaffirmation. Mastery is earned, never given. Evening descended slowly over the base, casting long amber streaks across the training grounds. Bernard Hicks walked alone, his hands behind his back, boots crunching against gravel. The obstacle course had ended hours ago, yet his mind lingered on memories decades old. Faded echoes of artillery fire, shouts, and commands played like a ghostly soundtrack in his thoughts. A sudden gust carried the scent of pine and distant smoke, stirring something deeper. Bernard stopped, squinting against the low sunlight. For a moment, he was no longer on the modern base but in a European town long ago. Streets scorched, rubble everywhere, young soldiers falling beside him. He could almost hear the cries of comrades lost, the relentless rhythm of a drum signaling advance or retreat. His grip on the rifle tightened instinctively, though it was safely slung at his side. Sergeant Evans appeared quietly beside him. "Sir, are you all right?" His voice broke the spell. Bernard turned, pale blue eyes meeting the younger man's, calm but edged with the weight of remembered pain. "Just shadows," he replied softly. "Memories, they linger." They walked together in silence, the young man cautiously matching Bernard's slow pace. How did you manage today?" "The course, it's insane even for seasoned Marines," Evans said, voice tinged with awe. Bernard's lips curled in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Experience is forged in fire. You learn to move through fear without letting it own you. That's what separates training from survival." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in crimson and violet. Bernard stopped near a small grove of pines, the smell of resin sharp in the cool evening air. He removed his hat, revealing thinning gray hair, and looked toward the horizon. "I've seen enough chaos in my lifetime, and yet, the discipline, the structure here, it's comforting. Reminds me there's still order in the world." Evans nodded, hesitant to interrupt but compelled to understand. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life? All the battles, the losses?" Bernard's gaze softened, eyes distant. "Regret? No. But there's a cost. Memories of those you couldn't save, moments where hesitation mattered, echoes that never fade. We carry them quietly." They continued walking, the gravel crunching beneath boots. Bernard's movements remained deliberate, body honed despite age. At the edge of the training field, he paused, turning to glance back at the obstacle course. Young Marines were gathering, chatting nervously, some still in awe of what they'd witnessed. Bernard's presence had shifted something, a subtle reminder that mastery and composure can inspire far more than words ever could. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the sounds of distant laughter, footsteps, and training commands. Bernard's jaw tightened slightly, a fleeting shadow of tension, but his posture remained resolute. "The past shapes you," he said softly, more to himself than to Evans. "But it doesn't define the present. Never forget that." As darkness crept over the base, the older Marine finally allowed himself to relax slightly. His shoulders eased, though the weight of memories remained. A silent companion, a reminder of years lived, battles fought, and wisdom earned. Evans stayed by his side, quietly absorbing the aura of experience, discipline, and unspoken lessons. The base lights flickered on, casting pools of brightness across the gravel paths. Bernard Hicks, 87 years old, still strong, still vigilant, walked toward the barracks. Shadows of the past clung to him, yes, but he moved forward, resolute, unwavering, an embodiment of honor and perseverance. Night had fully settled over the base, the distant hum of generators mingling with the occasional shout from late-night drills. Bernard Hicks moved deliberately through the dimly lit barracks corridor. Each step echoed softly against the polished floors, carrying the weight of decades of experience and memory. Though his body aged, his movements were precise, deliberate, every muscle trained to react without hesitation. In his private quarters, Bernard removed his jacket and laid it carefully over the back of a chair. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and worn leather, punctuated by the faint scent of pine from the open window. He sat by the desk, fingers tracing the grooves of an old metal case. Inside were reminders of past campaigns, victories hard won, and losses never forgotten. The dim light glinted off each medal, a silent testament to a life dedicated to service. A soft knock on the door broke the silence. Sergeant Evans peeked in carrying a small cup of tea. "Sir, thought you might want this." "It's been a long day," he said quietly. Bernard nodded, accepting the cup, warmth seeping into his hands. "Thank you. You're learning, Evans. Always notice the details. They matter more than you think." His gaze lingered on the young man, seeing determination mingled with hesitation. Evans stepped fully into the room, curiosity overcoming caution. "Sir, may I ask something personal?" Bernard's eyes, pale and steady, met the young man's. "Of course. If I can answer, I will." Evans hesitated, then spoke softly. "How did you endure it all? The battles, the losses, the constant fear?" Bernard leaned back, sipping his tea slowly, savoring both warmth and memory. "Fear is inevitable, but you endure because you have purpose. You have comrades who rely on you, and a mission larger than yourself. Focus on that and the rest becomes manageable." A silence followed, filled with unspoken understanding. Outside, wind rustled through the pine trees, carrying with it a hint of rain. Bernard's eyes drifted to the small window, imagining the young recruits training in the dark, learning discipline, resilience, and courage. "Every generation has its trials," he murmured. "We pass on what we've learned so they may face theirs stronger." Evans, inspired by the quiet strength before him, nodded. "I hope to be like you someday, sir. Not just skilled, but composed, decisive, respected." Bernard's lips curved in a rare, faint smile. "Then start by observing, learning, and respecting the lessons around you. Respect the past, but never be enslaved by it." The storm finally broke outside, rain tapping against the window pane in rhythmic percussion. Bernard rose, moving to close the window, letting the scent of wet earth mix with the pine. The room seemed smaller yet somehow more alive, filled with the resonance of life, memory, and quiet discipline. The night stretched long, but Bernard Hicks, even at 87, felt a renewed clarity, a sense that purpose, honor, and vigilance were eternal companions. Evans left quietly, leaving Bernard alone in reflection. He touched each medal once more, a connection to past comrades and missions, and then set them aside. Standing by the window, listening to the rain, he understood that life's weight could be managed with resilience, mindfulness, and unwavering dedication. Shadows of past battles lingered, yes, but they no longer controlled him. They were reminders, guides, and silent mentors. The dawn broke with muted colors over the old training grounds. Mist clung to the trees, curling around their roots like ghostly fingers. Bernard Hicks walked the perimeter, his cane tapping softly against the gravel, a rhythm that mirrored years of disciplined marches. Even at 87, he moved with purpose, each step deliberate, each glance sharp, trained over decades of service. The grounds were silent save for distant calls of awakening birds and the occasional creak of the old barracks doors. Bernard's eyes scanned the horizon, remembering mornings long past, when he had marched with younger soldiers through the fog, their boots striking in unison, hearts beating to the rhythm of duty and honor. The memories stirred a complex mix of pride and sorrow, pride in the lives he had shaped, sorrow for those who had not returned. Sergeant Evans approached cautiously, notebook in hand. "Sir, there's a report on the training schedules and evaluations," he said, keeping his voice low. Bernard glanced at him, eyes sharp but not unkind. "Evans, sometimes the metrics are less important than the men themselves. Observe them, understand them. Don't just tick boxes on a page." He leaned on his cane, surveying the young recruits performing drills in the mist, their movements imperfect yet determined. A sudden movement caught his attention, a young recruit struggling with the heavy pack during a maneuver. Bernard's gaze softened slightly. "Go to him," he instructed Evans, who hurried to assist. Bernard stayed back, silently monitoring, noting the nuances, strain on the shoulders, hesitation in the steps, determination in the eyes. This was his craft, observing, guiding, correcting without intrusion, ensuring resilience was built from within. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, dissolving the morning mist and revealing the structured chaos of a training ground alive with effort and learning. Bernard's thoughts drifted to his own past, to missions fraught with danger, and moments where every decision had held life or death consequences. He could still recall the sharp scent of gunpowder, the metallic tang of blood, the adrenaline-fueled precision that had once defined him. Those echoes of duty were no longer immediate threats, but lessons etched into muscle memory and character. By afternoon, Bernard moved to the old shooting range. He observed, correcting stances and posture, offering quiet advice to those struggling. His voice carried authority yet was calm, patient, a voice shaped by decades of command. Recruits listened, absorbing not just instructions, but the weight of experience and the unspoken lesson. Discipline, vigilance, and respect were inseparable. As the day waned, the shadows lengthened across the grounds. Bernard stood alone, watching the sun dip behind distant hills. The old soldier felt a quiet satisfaction. His presence, his mentorship ensured that the legacy of duty and honor would continue. Shadows of past battles lingered, but now they were guides, not burdens. He had fulfilled his mission, not through grand gestures, but through patient, persistent teaching, through modeling courage and integrity. Evening descended, and Bernard returned to his quarters. The day's events had left him tired, yet a profound calm filled him. He glanced once more at his medals, reminders of a life steeped in service. Outside, the night air carried whispers of wind through the pines. Bernard Hicks, despite age and the passage of time, felt aligned with his purpose. To be a living bridge between history and the future, a custodian of honor. The early morning fog hung heavier than usual over the training grounds, casting an ethereal glow over the rows of barracks. Bernard Hicks, leaning on his cane, moved steadily along the path, boots crunching gravel beneath him. His eyes, pale blue and keen, scanned the terrain with the precision of a lifetime of military discipline. Even in retirement, his presence commanded quiet respect, a subtle authority felt by everyone within sight. Inside the barracks, a new batch of recruits prepared for the day's exercises. Nervous chatter filled the air, punctuated by the distant clang of equipment. Bernard entered silently, nodding to the sergeant on duty. His gaze fell on one young recruit, barely 19, struggling to lace his boots properly. Bernard's lips pressed into a thin line, a mixture of amusement and understanding. "Patience," he murmured under his breath, the word carrying decades of experience. Outside, the recruits assembled in formation. Bernard's figure, slightly stooped but unwavering, stood at the edge of the formation. The morning sun pierced through the mist, illuminating the disciplined chaos of boots stamping and rifles being shouldered. He observed each movement, noting errors and strengths with a meticulous eye. Every hesitation, every misstep, was a lesson waiting to be imparted. By mid-morning, Bernard led a tactical exercise on the rugged terrain surrounding the base. His cane, though worn, was a stabilizing anchor as he navigated uneven ground. He pointed out strategic positions, highlighting the importance of observation, patience, and timing. The recruits followed, absorbing not just instructions, but the unspoken ethos of Bernard's life: diligence, resilience, and integrity under pressure. A sudden flurry of activity drew his attention. A miscommunication in the field caused two squads to clash during a drill. Bernard's voice rang out, firm but controlled, restoring order. "Observe, adapt, communicate. Every action has consequence. Learn from this, not just for today, but for every challenge ahead." His presence calmed the chaos, and the young soldiers responded with renewed focus, absorbing the lesson in discipline and composure. As the afternoon sun climbed, Bernard paused at a quiet overlook, surveying the valley below. Memories of past missions, of conflict zones and long nights under foreign skies surged momentarily. He remembered faces of those who had served beside him, some now gone, others scattered across continents. He exhaled slowly, a sense of quiet resolve settling over him. The past was a teacher, and the present, a canvas for imparting that wisdom. Evening brought a cold wind sweeping across the grounds. Bernard returned to the barracks, cane tapping a rhythmic farewell to the day. Recruits watched silently, some in awe, others inspired. In that quiet observation, Bernard felt a profound satisfaction. His life's mission, shaping minds, guiding the young, instilling discipline and courage, remained alive, breathing through the next generation. Shadows of his past no longer haunted him. They strengthened the path forward. Inside his quarters, he polished his old medals by lamplight, reflecting on decades of service and the lessons he had carried through both war and peace. Outside, the stars emerged, sharp against the cool night sky. Bernard Hicks, despite his age, remained steadfast, a living bridge between history and those who would inherit its lessons. Every action, every word, every glance was deliberate, a testament to a life devoted to duty and honor. The dawn broke gently over the base, painting the sky in soft hues of amber and rose. Bernard Hicks sat quietly on a wooden bench near the training yard, cane resting across his knees. His posture, though slightly bent with age, emanated calm authority. The crisp morning air carried the scent of dew-soaked grass and distant pine, grounding him in a world both familiar and fleeting. Today was different. The recruits he had trained for months were preparing for their final evaluation, a rigorous simulation designed to test not only skill, but character. Bernard observed silently, noting each movement, each gesture, as if he were reading a complex map of human potential. The young men and women moved with precision, embodying lessons he had imparted: patience, focus, and integrity. In the midst of the activity, one recruit faltered during a simulated assault, hesitation flickering across his face. Bernard approached, cane tapping softly on the stone path, eyes sharp but gentle.
"Steady," he instructed.
Remember, courage is measured in thought and action, not recklessness. You lead best when you observe first. The recruit nodded, steadying himself, and rejoined the exercise with renewed determination. Bernard allowed himself a small, approving smile, knowing his guidance had reached its mark. Midday sun illuminated the yard, casting long shadows of soldiers in disciplined formation. Bernard moved among them, offering advice, correcting minor errors, but always with a measured hand. He could sense the growth, the quiet transformation of raw recruits into capable, disciplined soldiers. This was his reward, witnessing the embodiment of his life's principles in the next generation. As the day waned, a ceremony began. Bernard was invited to address the graduating recruits, his voice carrying both gravitas and warmth. You have trained hard, but more importantly, you have learned to uphold honor, discipline, and courage. These qualities are eternal. Carry them into every mission, every challenge, and every choice. The legacy you leave is not medals, but the integrity of your actions. Murmurs of respect filled the yard. The young faces reflected admiration and a spark of inspiration. Later, Bernard walked the perimeter of the base, alone, reflecting on decades of service. Wars fought, lives saved, comrades lost. Each memory etched deeply into his mind. Yet he felt no bitterness, only a serene acceptance. Life had given him purpose, and now, in this twilight of his years, he found fulfillment in watching others carry forward the torch. The evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the barracks. Bernard returned to his quarters, laying his cane beside the polished metals that told stories of valor, resilience, and sacrifice. Outside, stars began to emerge, distant and unyielding, a reminder of time's permanence and human endeavor's fleeting nature. Bernard Hicks, military veteran and mentor, remained a steadfast figure, an enduring symbol of duty, wisdom, and honor. As night enveloped the base, the quiet hum of the world continued. Distant conversations, the occasional footstep, the rustle of leaves. Bernard sat by the window, eyes reflecting both the past and the possibilities of tomorrow. His life, dedicated to service, had come full circle, not in fame or fortune, but in the lives he had shaped, the principles he had instilled, and the enduring legacy of honor he had left behind.